So this is what you need to be aware of with regards to fights in your school district. And it doesn't matter. Just let's lay this argument to shame right now. I cannot stand the people who go, well, do you have kids in the public school district? Because my kids, I homeschooled them and then they went to a private Christian school for a reason. But guess what? I pay taxes, a buttload of taxes, a buttload of property taxes to that school. Where my money goes, so goes I. That's the rule. So I pay taxes. And also think of how communities are oriented around school districts. A lot of people will want to move to a particular community because of the school district, right? If you got kids, so one of the reasons we moved to the community that we did was if something were to happen where we couldn't afford a Christian school or whatever, we had a fallback plan, and that we at least had, even though it was leaning progressive, still a public school that had a lot of opportunities to offer, right? And a lot of people make those decisions. You look at the investment of your tax dollars. So the town that I live in Texas is a very interesting town because it's not a town that I would say is where you have generational residents. About 95% of the people who live in my town came from somewhere else. Everybody started coming to Texas. We came to Texas over a decade ago. And one of the reasons that I was looking at this area, my town that I'm in now, and several other towns, because I wanted to be by one certain church. We knew the church that we wanted to go to. I needed to be by the airport because I was always on a plane. And then we made our decisions around that. And we ended up in the town that we're in, and we're very happy here, and we love our neighbors. And there's a very organized, a small but very vocal and very organized progressive group here that tries to raise hell for everybody. And they were trying to do it with our school board. Now, even though it is Texas, and even though we are technically a Fort Worth suburb, not really a Dallas suburb, because we're closer to Fort Worth, we're actually my jury duty, I had to go to Fort Worth and not Dallas. But we're in the suburbs, and I've never lived in the suburbs. I always lived in the country or in the city. I've never lived in the suburbs until I moved here, and it was glorious. I mean, there's so many amazing things in the suburbs. I don't know why people give them such a bad rap. And in this town, I loved the way it was laid out. I, read good things about the academic standards in the school district. I liked the people that we met here, etc. But like I said, there's this very well-funded progressive group, and they've been trying to they were running the show at the school board for a long time. So just give you a lay of the land of how this kicked off. We first noticed this happening with our school resource officer program, SROs. A lot of schools have these. In fact, I have a headline coming up later about how Long Island, they're hiring all kinds of SROs to protect 70,000 public school kids in Long Island. They're all making the move, and school districts around the country are doing this. We actually passed a bond issue to fund it here in South Lake, the town I live in. And so we were funding these SROs. We wanted to have trained armed officers to protect our kids, and it was working very well. And then it started to get super progressive. There were numerous proposals, and I've written extensively about this, and I'll make sure I include that if you want to go back and read it. I had a piece in Newsweek as well on this. We passed a bond issue for this, and then the progressives, they created a student group, and then the progressive parents had the students basically front it, and they were demanding the salaries that, again, we voted on for SROs they wanted the SRO program eliminated, and they wanted to hire DEI chiefs, diversity officers for the school, and have the SRO salary fund them. In fact, they just wanted one diversity officer, and they wanted all the salaries for the SRO to fund that person. It was crazy. Then they began proposing required DEI CRT courses. Now, the DEI is the diversity, whatever, all that stupid stuff. The CRT is critical race theory. It is a Marxist strategy wherein racial, sexual, religious identity replaces the economic factors that were previously used with Leninists, Marxists, etc. And so they began demanding coursework as a requirement to graduate from the school. So if you were going to graduate from Carroll ISD, they were demanding that you have these CRT courses. And yes, Marxist courses that talked about how you're horrible if you're a white person, and racial, like they were fabricating history. They were going off of that one project. What's her face did? That PBS ended up adopting and then having to walk away from. And they were pushing all of this stuff and demanding brainwashing in these courses as a requirement to graduate. They also came out with proposals. They almost adopted these. School board almost took them, where students could be permanently penalized for, quote unquote, the word was perceived offenses. So if someone felt as though that they were offended in any kind of way, whether it was like a racial or sexual way, that would be a permanent part of that student's record. There was no due process in this whole system for the students. Understandably, a lot of parents were upset, particularly a lot of families of color. And there was a parental group that formed to push back against this. And one of the leaders of the group was a Cuban family. Now, lost in all of the reporting on this are those facts. So what ended up happening is an out-of-town white progressive slacker struck gold for NBC and began grifting and making fat bank for himself. I'm not going to tickle his jimmies by mentioning his name or his stupid book that's out today, because he wants attention so bad. He is thirstier than a broke chick on OnlyFans to try to get some attention for this. So he started doing a podcast, doing all this stuff. He was working in coordination with the well-funded progressive group, well-funded and well-organized, that started attacking the parents and all of this stuff. So when these parents formed the group and began pushing back, the progressives attacked them. I don't know if you remember this, but I wrote about this at the time. This was actually pretty insane. They actually sent out mailers railing against the families. They made false accusations. What they did was actually libelous, like legitimately libelous. They were naming and smearing parents, including families of color, black families and Hispanic families that were helping to lead the pushback against this. And they were trying to make up accusations about their finances and personal lives in a mailer that they sent to every household. It was a glossy mailer. No joke. And my friend Joy Pullman over at the Federalist wrote about this because I sent her the flyer that I'd received in my mailbox. And they went after all of this. Like their plan that was in 2018 was called the CCAP plan, the Cultural Competence Action Plan. And you had to, it included a tip line where students could snitch on students if they felt that someone was not acting in racial harmony or something like that. I mean, it was to the point, in fact, they said microaggressions and discriminatory behavior would be logged in a permanent digital record for students. They also wanted to offer state crime victim grants for I'm not kidding you. That's where all this was. So this is what parents were fighting back against. So this grifter comes in from NBC, and parents successfully pushed back to the point where we took over the school board in successive landslide victories. I mean landslide, where the conservative candidates for school board got over 83% of the vote. That was the lowest. 83, 85, and something like 92%. It was crazy. So there wasn't, all of this is like fabrication and lies from the left. The left has been targeting this school district because this school district, this county in which I live in, is the largest urban red county and the last large urban red county in America. And they've been targeting this county because if they can flip it, you can prove that there's a blueprint for taking Texas. They did this in Colorado, and they ran up against parents in Texas. And parents push back. When you start messing with our kids, you see a whole different type of activists come out. And that's what they met here. So they've been working with NBC. They had NBC driving their cars throughout subdivisions here in my town, recording the homes of the parents. They had a reporter illegally enter. They trespassed this NBC production team, and I have the video of it in case anybody wants to go toe-to-toe. I haven't released it because it shows some identifying factors on the outside of the home. But they actually trespassed into the home of one of the parents. that was having a meeting with some of the other parents about fighting this. NBC actually trespassed in this parent's home and they had to be escorted out, and it's all on camera. Audio as well. Unbelievable, right? That's the extent to which they sank for all this. And in the meantime, they decided to have a person. They said that they had a parent that was their avatar for all of this. And it was a woman that they interviewed and they featured who doesn't live in my town, doesn't have kids in the school district, and doesn't pay taxes here. Not kidding you. I once disagreed with this person on Facebook and they challenged me to meet up with them like offline. I'm not even joking. I was like, oh my gosh, is this Ozarks? Like, what is happening here? But that's all of that is missing in the NBC Grifter book and podcast. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because the DOJ has announced that they're getting involved in our school district. They've been investigating to see if there's any kind of civil rights violations. This is the federal government's vengeance against parents who successfully take over their school board from the CRT DEI craziness. And it all just happened to coincide with this grifter's book coming out and NBC's involvement. And interestingly enough, a lot of the people that were interviewed in the book and elsewhere are also activists on other groups nationally that have been working with the Progressive Parent Group in Southlake. None of this is disclosed. That's just the tip of the iceberg. So in your town, you need to watch out for this. The fight isn't over just because you win and you take over your school board. The fight isn't over just because you defeat a plan to indoctrinate your kids using your tax dollars in your public schools. Because now what the Biden administration and what Obama Biden before them did have proven is that they will absolutely abuse the authority of their federal agencies to go after and try to rectify, undo free and fair elections to penalize people who make their will known at the ballot box. You see it happening with a number of other issues, so it shouldn't surprise you that it happens with education, even in a suburban school district. We're going to have more on this because now it's got my full attention. And they got their asses kicked once. I guess they want to have another narrative fight and lose again. I don't know. But this is what you got to watch out for in your towns. You always have to be vigilant. That's the price of freedom, and we're blessed to be able to work for that.